How you guys doing? I'm Hades, and today I want to talk about why Cyrax in Mortal Kombat 1 might be one of the most hated characters in Mortal Kombat history, specifically MK1 Cyrax. Now, gameplay aside, I don't think it's because of that. I understand the bombs and the setups all throughout the lifespan of the game from Cyrax's release to what I presume to be the final patch has been ridiculous, and they have toned it down some, but I don't think gameplay alone can make the entire player base absolutely despise the character. And I'm going to point the elephant in the room, that being the gender swap. Now, personally, I didn't care too much about it because I was never a huge Cyrax fan. Like, the character itself has always been cool to me, but it was a non-issue for me. I just didn't care. But that really pissed off a lot of people, and I completely understand why. All of a sudden, your favorite, robot, is now a girl. They're completely different. Throughout the story, she is able to beat both Grandmasters and Sector, even though she's pretty much like an apprentice. I don't get it. There's just a lot of factors that make Cyrax so despised by like the NRS community and just Mortal Kombat fans. So first thing, I mentioned the gender swap. I think it was unnecessary completely. And a lot of people have voiced sentiments about not liking it because instead of Cyrax, they could have had a different girl MK character. And I agree with that. I think instead of Cyrax, they definitely could have had like Serena, they even could have had a DLC guest, like let's say Buffy the Vampire. This is gonna sound ridiculous. Ripley from Alien, maybe even like Laura Croft from Tomb Raider. There's a lot of female characters they could have had as guests, but NRS chose to go a more, quite frankly, lazy route with it and decided to say, oh, you know what, fuck it. Let's just make Cyrax have a vagina. Let's make Sector have a vagina. I know a lot of people just don't like me being so just straightforward with it, but that's exactly what they did, right? And I think another weird thing with the gender is how like Cyrax had a relationship with Scorpion and Sector is with Sub-Zero. It kind of makes you think, was the only reason they gender swapped not even for PR saying, hey, we first female guest characters, but because they wanted to like live out some weird Lin Kuei fantasy. It's just funny and weird to think about. So the gender swap is the first thing, and the thing I mentioned while talking about the gender swap, and that's going to be the second thing as to why I think people will despise Cyrax, her role in the story. And so I think she's the first character you play in the story mode. And that's all fun and good. But you're introduced to her throughout her chapter beating like characters that should be whooping her ass. She beats Sector, right? You don't do that fight, but she beats Sector in the training room. Then when they, go and interrupt Kuai Liang's marriage, right? Scorpion's marriage, she beats Scorpion. And after she finds out that Sub-Zero lied to her about Kuai Liang betraying them, she then beats Sub-Zero. And that begs the question, why the fuck is she even a part of the Lin Kuei? Why'd she even join the Shirai Ryu at the end of the story if she's just whooping everyone's ass? I need to know this, guys. Why is she part of any sort of affiliation with any of these clans when she just beat both Grandmasters in the span of the same day, literally back to back, quite literally back to back? It doesn't make any sense. And Mike Hollow didn't like that either, and I fully agree with him. I didn't like it. I'm just thinking, how the fuck, how is this possible? That's the first thing in my mind when I was playing Cyrax, and I finished whooping Scorpion and Sub-Zero's ass. I'm thinking, what the fuck? I'm just like, what the hell? Like, actually, what the hell? It's weird, but that's a story mode issue with the power scaling. But a lot of people did not like that. They did not like that, and rightfully so. I'm one of those people who did not like that. It didn't never made any sense to me. So I think that's the second biggest reason. Like, her role in the story mode was just horrible. Like, they did not make her likable at all, just because of how they treated the character. But I think the third thing that is that if you play this game is going to be very apparent in the gameplay. And I don't think this is the biggest thing. I stated that at first beginning of the video, but I do think it's like a good chunk. Because, I mean, story mode aside, gender aside, you know, it's a fighting game, right? So the gameplay has to be fun, has to be interactive. Well, she's the complete opposite of that. I don't inherently think she's too fun to play when you use her meta cameos, so let me explain. So earlier, I did make a video of me just talking about my Combat League match where I use Cyrax and Cyrax. Now, Cyrax and Cyrax I think is really fun to play because it's not Serena, it's not Trimmer, you know, it's not like Striker. You're not using meta, it's Cyrax. Cyrax, I just think is really cool, and you have to be really creative with it. You know, you can do bomb setups in the corner with the cameo and her. You can do like double net in the same combo, you know, with the cameo net and your own net. So I just think that's really fun. But what's not fun about Cyrax is how non-interactive she is. So as you can see from the video that's been playing this whole time, her whole thing is to get you in her goop, set up bombs, and forces you to guess again. So you're forced between a throw or a mid inherently, or just another bomb, right? And if you make the wrong read on a bomb by ducking a throw and hope she hits the mid, you get popped up. Now, the biggest counter to this, is to jump. So a lot of players will just jump out of the setup on a right read. That's even what I do. And that's pretty much the only counter to it, more or less. That's the only broad approach counter. Now, she isn't as bad as Shiva was in MK11, but her gameplay is so boring to play against, and that has really just made players hate her even more. And it all just really piles up. So first, you fucked with a fan favorite character that's been around for, I think, like 30 plus years. You know, you change the gender of a character that tons of old school fans love. Everyone loves Cyrax. I would argue everyone loves Cyrax. Then you make her role in the story really bad. You make her easily one of the most hated characters in the story because it just doesn't make any sense. And then you make her gameplay atrocious for the opponent, right? It is not fun to play against Cyrax. So when you pile up those three things, it makes sense to me why everyone hates Cyrax, right? I'm not one of those people who hate Cyrax because I wouldn't play the character if I hated Cyrax, but it totally makes sense to me. You know, I can be playing Combat League with Cyrax, and 9 times out of 10, if I lose a match, I'll get teabagged, or during the match, I'll be teabagging or talking trash, because that's how much this community despises Cyrax, right? And, you know, I can't even blame them, really. NRS just did not listen to the fans. They didn't listen to the community when making this character. And it shows. It shows. Everyone loves Cyrax and MKX, right? The Triborg variation. Because it was a dude. I'm just going to say it, that's a big part of it. Not going to lie to you. Was a dude. Didn't have crazy setups. The gameplay was super fun and interactive. Right, and he was like very hard to play in MKX. Not many players played Cyrax. You know, you do a lot of things for very low damage, but you get like a somewhat vortex. You know, I would argue Cyrax was one of the most fair characters in Mortal Kombat X, and one of the most swaggy and fun to play. And you know, the story thing doesn't exist because, you know, Triborg was DLC in MKX, but I just wish, in my opinion, I wish, and I think that if this were to happen, well, if this would have happened, excuse me, that players would hate Cyrax so much. So I think the big thing, if they just kept Cyrax the way he was, as like a dude, not dating Scorpion, not beating all the Grandmasters in the story mode, and the gameplay is somewhat interactive. Right, they had a formula. You know, I think they had a good formula for how to make Cyrax good in this game, and they just went for something completely off and took a risk on it, you know? And I'm just like, okay, right? I definitely think Cyrax would be a lot more loved if they would have just not altered the character so heavily. If they would have just kept him somewhat like himself, but as Cyrax is today, it honestly, even though I enjoy playing her, she just, it's not Cyrax to me. And I think that's honestly the biggest thing. You know, with those three things I've mentioned added up, I think Cyrax just doesn't feel like Cyrax at all. It's kind of like someone cosplaying as a character, you know? Like, yeah, they look like them. Yeah, they have the moves. But there's so much that's different to where you know it's not them, right? It's like looking at a cosplayer, you know, in the game. And it's just so jarring to a lot of the MK fan bases, you know? A lot of the MK player base. And it's not something I honestly expected from NRS. I get it's a whole new era, new timeline, but I just don't think they should have altered the character so much. So much. It's just a recipe for, you know, disaster. And I don't hope the people who greenlit all of these changes get fired, but I hope they at least learn from this mistake. And if they did get fired, well, you know, hopefully stuff like this doesn't happen again. So thank you guys so much for watching. Those are my thoughts on why I think every player who plays MK1 and Mortal Kombat fans hate Cyrax and MK1. So if you like my little ramble session, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, guys, you know, peace out. Have a nice day.